This is a special meeting of the Board of Education for Marion City Schools. It is 7:05, and I'll call this meeting to order.
Mrs. McKay?
Here.
Mr. McInnes?
Here.
Ms. Dyer?
Here.
Mr. Ratliff? Mr. Weebly?
All right. All right, well, I'd like to introduce Terry Morgan from Ohio School Boards Association, and she's going to give us a presentation this evening on how they do searches for superintendents. So welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here. And I have a copy of my PowerPoint in the packet if you want to make any notes, as well as the proposal that is the actually the official contract and has prices and references and those kind of things in it. But what I'd like to do is just go over the process and how we help you facilitate a superintendent search. Next slide. We really like this saying that successful search has that strong team of consultants, a comprehensive and transparent process, and certainly ends with a solid long-term relationship between the board and its senior leadership team. One of the things that we feel is the advantage of hiring a facilitator is that it keeps the board objective, fair, transparent. All the applicants are treated the same, and we'll talk a little bit about that through the process. Next slide. So the reason that we feel we are duly qualified is that we are your association. We're the Board Members Association. Cheryl, Ryan, and myself are former board members. I've actually sat on 4 different boards, starting with the Olentangy board and the Delaware Area Career Center, the ESC of Delaware Union, which then got eaten up by the ESC of Central Ohio. But I served on I was on boards from 95 till 2010. And I hired superintendents and I hired treasurers. So hopefully that too is an advantage that either Cheryl or I would bring. We do make sure that we work diligently right up front to develop that appropriate fit profile, to get those characteristics that are important to the board that you're looking at in candidates. And then speaking with your stakeholder groups. We do an all-day focus group in the district and meet with all of your different stakeholder groups to, again, gain their input on what they'd like to see in your new superintendent. Next slide. We understand the process has to be flexible and customized, and I can tell you we have all kinds of twists and turns at our fingertips because we've done those with other districts. So we spend a lot of time in that first planning meeting talking about what fits best for Marion. Certainly the season to look for the most candidates for superintendent is January, February, March. I don't know what your timeline is going to look like, but I'll talk a little bit later about what a potential timeline could be. We are in as consultants from the very beginning till the very end. And if in fact you got to final interviews and you still haven't found that rock star to hire for Marion, we would be there to help you start the process again at no additional cost. We are in the process with you until you find the right fit. Next slide. One of the things that we think is extremely important is that the board makes all the decisions. So we give you every applicant. You see all of the people that apply for your position. Now we have an internal screening committee made up of former superintendents, and I will have that information if you'd like to put that into your thinking process as you go through each candidate. But we believe that this is the board's decision, and we want the board to guide that decision. The Revelis is our online application system, and even if you have internal candidates, all the candidates have to apply through Revelis. So again, it's apples to apples. Every page of that Revelis application is the same for each candidate. So they all fill out a work history, they all fill out a reference list, they all fill out answers to questions that we use that we feel gain good information for you. We also have the Achiever, which is an online behavioral assessment tool. that we have the finalists take the achiever. And it's not a right or wrong kind of assessment. It's, do you tend to be more rigid or more flexible? Again, just another tool in your toolbox for you to have another insight into your finalists and who would be the better or best candidate for Marion. We offer leadership development training at the end of your search, a 3-hour workshop with your new superintendent, treasurer, and your board members. Again, that's part of our process, as well as that guaranteed satisfaction. Next slide. You can hit all of them.
Yeah. How
Thanks.
many are there?
I think there's 6.
Okay.
No, 5.
Okay.
So the leadership profile is the first thing that I talked about, is spending time with you as a board, developing those qualities that you think are most important. By our very nature of our Revella system, your search becomes a nationwide search only because 14 other states have purchased use of our Revella system. So it immediately goes on their home pages too. But what I would say to you is we really find that best applicants come from Ohio with an Ohio superintendent's license. So the majority of our marketing will be spent to all of the districts in Ohio, as well as regional kinds of emails. One of the things that we hope you realize is because all the districts, except for one, are members of OSBA, and so we're not going to call a current superintendent in a district and say, oh, apply for Marion, because we aren't going to steal from one member to help another member. But what we're going to make sure is that they hear about the opening. And so we have multiple ways to do that. The objective screening process, again, we feel is a very big advantage, and that board-centered evaluation, and finally, the appointment. Next slide. So this is a little bit about how our timeline would look, that first planning meeting with your board, and then we draft a brochure for you. It's an online brochure. We don't print it, but it has the qualifications you're looking for, a little bit about Marion City Schools, a little bit about the Marion community, your timeline of when first and second interviews are going to be. All of those dates are in that brochure. We schedule those focus group meetings that will be in your district. And again, we would talk about, is it better to have schools meet together or all of the elementary teachers and all of the high school teachers? So that's a discussion we'd have, is how would you like your focus groups? How would they feel most comfortable giving me input about what they'd like to see in the next superintendent? We usually leave the opening for 1 month. We find that almost every single search, the people wait till the last week to apply. So we don't ever panic, even though we have it open a month. They have to, within the Revella system, they have to complete a profile first, and then they use that profile to apply for different positions that they like. So it is a 2-step process, so we want to make sure people have enough time to do that. The internal screening would happen at the same time that that portal opens to you. Again, we don't use paper. We want you to go on the portal and be able to review all of those applicants. And you have a notes section where you can put your notes that can be brought up then when we actually do the screening meeting. Choosing those first interviews, we're going to hope, if you are in that January to March timeframe, I would easily expect 13 to 15 applicants for your position. And so that first set of interviews, we're going to encourage you to think about at least 8. That gives you a broader look at all the qualifications that candidates could bring to your position and helps you narrow down what you really want to find. Again, 2 finalists, at the most 3. We have the ability to include some kind of meet the candidates night or a town hall for your finalists if you feel like that community input's an important part. But we'll also have the discussion about, this is the board's decision, and what happens if you do that board meet the candidates and your community loves one candidate but the board's leaning towards another one. So we would walk through those kind of deliberations. Again, helping you to get to the contract and actual hire, and then that start date and the meeting where you have. Next slide. As I mentioned before, we have a national organization, you can hit it again, National Association of Superintendent Searchers, and we are a member of that, and those are the 14 of the 23 states are now using our Revella system. So again, easy marketing, and any of the marketing that we do is at no cost to you, unless we decided, you know, we needed a big ad in an education magazine would be the only thing that would be above and beyond. Next slide. The Achiever, as I mentioned, we took what we felt were excellent superintendents like Steve Massey and took those qualities and benchmarked them to certain standards. And so we want the finalists to fall into those stay nines of those standards that we feel are so critical to become an excellent superintendent. So again, it's helpful for you to have a little more insight. This Achiever profile also gives you some probable interview questions, as well as some, if there is a weak area, here's some professional development you might want to line up. Next slide. Revellas, as I said, we found we were using just bits and pieces, and we decided we needed a system that for us consultants gave us all of the information that we needed, as well as all the information a board would need. So we spent a lot of years getting this refined, and it's still sometimes a work in progress, but it really is a very easy way for you to have access to all of your candidates, and it's open until the end of your search, so you can go back in and back out of it. Next slide. That community and staff involvement, again, your stakeholder groups, and maybe you have a very active ministerial association and you decide that's a stakeholder group that needs to be part of the focus group day. Maybe you have a very strong union that the union would want a separate stakeholder time. So again, we would develop that timeline for the focus group day. The references are included in your proposal, and again, we would come up with that customized timeline for you. We would say at a maximum it would take 90 days, but I can tell you we have crunched them all the way down to, you know, a month. So we are here to have that conversation to make it fit into your timeline. Next slide. So just a couple of final points. All the key decisions do belong to the board. We really feel like that community input, all of your stakeholder input is extremely important. The candidate information isn't filtered. You see everything as it is presented. We feel like we are well aware of the laws and statutes that keep you from stepping out of line on any of the processes. Certainly we know the process is fair and transparent. And again, we have that workshop that we offer for free within the first 6 months. Next slide. Again, our guarantee that we will be with you at no additional cost until you find the right superintendent, and certainly that we are as vested in your success as you are. Any questions or anything I didn't cover?
I want to go back to your comment about recruitment. And I think I heard you say that you don't actively recruit member superintendents.
We don't make calls directly to them to say, John, will you please apply for this position? But what we are going to do is make sure that an email arrives in their inbox that says, we have an opening in Marion, we're looking for the right fit, if you or someone you know is interested.
Does that include assistant superintendents,
Absolutely,
directors
everyone.
of learning?
Yeah, we send it to all the top leadership, treasurers, superintendents, assistants, principals, they all.
But I mean, as far as recruitment, you won't recruit
They
lower
all-
level.
Yes. They all have the
executives.
opportunity. If they have a superintendent license, they can apply. We even have treasurers that also have a superintendent license. So they all have the ability to apply. They will all know about the position.
Okay.
You said something about there would probably be about 15 candidates. Is that after you've narrowed them down, or
That's total.
That's total.
Yeah. It's interesting. We, before COVID, we were seeing higher numbers of applicants, and it's interesting perspective. Either a superintendent loves what they do, but they need a new district to do it in, or they're just kind of hunkering down and getting through all of this change and trying to get back to some state of normalcy. So you just really never know post-COVID.
And so January is about the time to,
Yes.
so what would we'd be looking at doing like board development then to
Well,
understand what
the
we're
planning
looking?
meeting would be, I would say, November or December.
Right.
So we're all set to go, and then your search would open in January, and then be open January to February, some kind of timeline there, so that you are doing your interviews in February,
Okay.
if that fits with your schedule. That is the ultimate best process.
Do you limit the number of searches you do at any one time?
No.
So it would be only the 4 of you that are from OSBA that,
You'll have one consultant, one of the 4. I'm
And-
hoping it's me.
and is it that?
I'd like to do it.
And are those, you would do the focus groups as well? You would do it all?
We do it all. That's why we like the consistency, because we become experts on Marion. We get to know you, we know what we've heard on the focus groups, so we can help develop your profile, those kind of things.
What's our reputation right now?
I don't know that any district has a reputation. I think certainly there is an awareness that there's been some challenging meetings. But you know what? We have a lot of really good superintendents who love a challenge. And they're in a district where everything's going really well and they're kind of just on autopilot. And I see them apply all the time because they want a new challenge.
How do you handle confidentiality for applicants?
Sure. That's why the Revella system is so nice, because until we open that portal to you, it is confidential, and it's with us, so that you, once it's opened, then I become your spokesperson. If we get a public records request or a media request, we're going to supply those names. I handle that for you, so it doesn't put the burden on someone else. And after you have access to the names, and what we try and do is encourage them to wait and just give the names of the first interviews. So again, someone who applied and didn't even get a first interview, we try and prevent their name from going out there.
And how do you do that if the media ask for the names?
We
of
have to
who
give it
have
to them, but I
applied?
call all the applicants and say, I want you to know they have asked for the names. Do you want to stay and be part of a screening process, or would you like to pull out now? I rarely have anybody. It's just that they like to wait to the last minute to tell their current district that they're actually looking. So we try and be respectful of that process. Because again, they're our members.
Yeah.
You know, we had talked too a little bit about a couple of things. One is it's been mentioned among us that, you know, there are several retired superintendents that live in our district, and you know that it might be easier to just like go out and just ask one of them to, you know, take up this mantle. What are the pros and cons, and if they're interested, how would they, you know, get connected to you?
This is not an unusual situation. We hear this a lot. And what I would say to you, I am going to be a strict adherence to the process kind of facilitator for you to protect you as a board. You do not want a superintendent coming in that your community and all your stakeholders think they got the job because they knew somebody on the board, or they had an in that somebody didn't. So we would never go to retired superintendents unless it was to say, if you are interested in this position, please apply through our Revella system. If you had an internal candidate, we're going to say, please apply through the Revella system. If somebody sends you a resume, you're going to say, please apply through the Revella system. we will not accept or present you with any candidates that haven't come through that Revella system.
Are most searches successful, or do you have?
I've never not had a successful one.
That you had to
Yeah.
do it again?
No, I can't think of a search. I can't think of a single search that I've had where we had to restart the process. I know a couple of the consultants have had one only because they tried to do it at the wrong time of year. And they couldn't get the applicants because a good superintendent is not going to want to leave their current district high and dry to come to your district. So the timing's got to be right. And we are try to be respectful of that. Mm-hmm. Back to your question, one of the, I guess, pros about a retired superintendent is if you really wanted to go that way, I would suggest to you that you don't hire a facilitator, that you actually just interview that person and decide if you want to hire them, because there is no reason to go through the process. But the con side of that is you aren't giving the transparency and the opportunity for your community to have input. Mm-hmm. And you certainly get more buy-in when they've had their say.
What would you say to someone who thinks that perhaps the board doing it on its own without a consultant, what's the pros and cons of that?
Well, you have to have a really good secretary person, and that whether that would be your treasurer, whether it would be your interim superintendent or someone on the board. It is a lot of calls, follow-up emails with confirmations, thank you letters. You know, you want to make sure that you go through the appropriate process. If you have someone that can do that for you, and you have a way to get the word out, I mean, you can pay for an ad with OSBA about your open position, but we are not going to put it on our homepage unless it's a facilitated search. Mm-hmm. I think it's just making sure you can do the right steps and make it transparent if you're going to do it yourself. Mm-hmm. The steps aren't rocket science, but they're critical.
Yeah. When you have a board that's maybe not, they're not all on one page, what does that search look like for them?
Sure. The one thing that I faithfully do is I don't send any emails unless I send it to all the board members and usually the interim and treasurer. So everybody hears everything at the same time. Oftentimes with a person who isn't supportive of the process, I won't get answers. But I take the majority that answer and we move on. Again, I have each board member answer me individually if I have some kind of question, or you don't answer at all, I'm just sending you informational kinds of emails. So I don't think the process gets stopped if everybody isn't on board, but I want everybody in the know.
Because we've been accused of not being fiscally responsible. Mr. Mazzi and I had that conversation today, and we wanted to make sure, you know, because Ted has been through this like 7 times before. And Kelly, have you ever done this?
I was on it a little while for Bob's.
Mm-hmm. And I've not been on the board a long time either, and I think I would feel more comfortable with someone. Heaven forbid we put the responsibility on him or a Veronica. So, and I say all that to lead up to the legwork that we as board members need to do. It just seems like we just need to sit down and gather the information through the portal, correct? And
All you need to do is the homework that I ask you. You know, I will lead you through every step. I won't make any decisions for you, but I will lead you to every step, and I'll tell you when, okay, I need this now, so that we keep moving forward. And I am really strict about our calendar, our timeline. Once we set those dates, they have to stay that way, and I'm gonna make my commitment to meet those dates, and then I would expect you to.
And we were talking too about a laundry list of what our expectations. Our last superintendent was like a Rotarian. He was in Kiwanis, is a United Way, League of Women Voters, you know, all those very visible in the community. And so as we are having discussion about that, how much would you consider what our ideal superintendent?
I'm going to take your ideals. You know, what I have is the list of what we feel are the top qualifications that we believe make a good superintendent, and I'm going to share that with you, and you're going to tell me what are our top 10 most important qualities, and how, you know, if community service is something that you want, we're going to be putting that into the brochure. That's going to be an important point that we want to make sure. Don't apply if you're not interested in living and being involved in the community, or at least living close by. That's another conversation we'll have about residency. I will walk you through all those different points that really develop that profile. Any other questions? I certainly don't want to keep you on a beautiful summer night, but
It is gorgeous, isn't it?
it is. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to explain our process. And if you think of any questions afterwards, please call me. You know where I am.
Yep.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I guess I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll second.
Second.
Call the roll?
Ms. McKay?
Yes.
Mr. McInnes?
Yes.
Ms. Dyer?
Yeah.
Meeting's adjourned at 7:32. Awesome.
Thank you very much.